He then struck the ship a second time and shattered the hull, which caused the ship to fill with water and sink, leaving the men bobbing in the wreck.
Hi, I'm Sarat, and this is a talk about animal resistance.
Oh my god, oh no, he's actually out! He's actually out!
Before I play a PowerPoint about what it means to forge solidarity across species, I'll say a little about the context in which the study of animal resistance has emerged. One of the reasons I'm interested in this topic is that stories of animal resistance can have a strong pedagogical impact, bringing attention to animals' agency as well as their plight in human-dominated society. Animal resistance has long been depicted in various mediums with both fictional and real-life representations. To give a few examples, artwork such as the rebellious horses in Jericho's Race of the Riderless Horses in Rome, and literature from activist writings such as The Plague Dogs, to the numerous fictional plots about collective bird attacks, political allegories such as Animal Farm, and nonfiction writing like The Tiger, A True Story of Vengeance and Survival, and many more. We can even find signs of animal resistance in relics of ancient times, such as a mosaic that is found in Sicily, which depicts various animals being loaded unwillingly onto a docked boat. Many individuals, such as those in this mosaic, were to be taken from their homes and transported overseas to the ancient Roman Colosseum, where they would be killed in horrific hunting games. In one documented case, upon realizing that there was no way to flee the arena in which they were being attacked, and this was documented by Pliny the Elder, a group of elephants raised their trunks and vocalized a plea for compassion to the crowd. In response, despite being accustomed to the horrors of these shows, the spectators were reportedly stunned, moved to tears, and they wanted the show to end. In modern times, new print media has often documented stories of animal resistance. The New York Times was a significant source for such stories, and unfortunately these cases almost always had terrible outcomes for the resistors. This is before animal sanctuaries or social media. Another notable example is the weekly Italian newspaper La Domenica del Corriere, which often featured stories and artwork of animals' resistance in public spaces. Most recently, animals' resistance has begun to be examined in a critical social-historical context. Early documentation that expressed solidarity with animals who revolt was published by anarchist periodicals in the late 20th century. In the early 21st century, scholarly documentation, art, films, and social media pages have highlighted animals' agency and voices. One example is a powerful and ongoing campaign called #StopCassler in Italy, which is in solidarity with bears who are imprisoned in small cages in Trentino after they were captured. One of them, called M49, is well known for their daring escapes and has drawn a lot of attention to this troubling situation.
And on our website, a fugitive bear likened to a superhero for its daring escape over an electric pen in northern Italy is being hunted by forest rangers. The brown bear, named as M49, was snared in the Trentino region on Sunday, but escaped again, reportedly scaling 3 electric fences and a 4-meter-high barrier.
Other animals communicate, but humans have ignored and silenced their voices. Whether it be cooks leaving the room and setting a timer when they boil lobsters alive and the lobsters try to escape the pots, or the masses who continue to consume farmed animals and won't watch footage of slaughterhouses. By acknowledging animals' voices and agency, we acknowledge their participation in and central roles in their liberation movement as well. Take the case of a goat named Fred, for instance. In the late summer of 2017, Fred escaped from an animal auction yard in Hackettstown, New Jersey. Fred lived free for some time and was sometimes witnessed with a herd of deer or popping up around the town, including near the local train station. Now, you might think that this would be the last we would hear of Fred. But a year later, Fred made headlines again when he was credited with freeing 60 goats and sheep from the same auction house. While this new development was unfolding, the police department confirmed that Fred had been sighted near the auction house just hours before the latest breakout. The auction manager stated that Fred was responsible because they had witnessed Fred showing up at the site the following day and proceeding to headbutt the gate that was now holding the recently recaptured animals. Presumably because of his ALF-type action, as well as ongoing sighting reports, the police captured Fred soon after this incident. By this time, Fred was viewed by some locals as the community's unofficial mascot, and they didn't take well to this. They rallied for his freedom in a Free Fred campaign and offered Fred sanctuary in their gardens. In response, the livestock auction stated that they would not sell Fred for slaughter. However, instead of releasing Fred to a sanctuary that had publicly offered him freedom, Fred was returned to a farm that didn't want to be named and that said he would be used as a breeder goat. This claim comes across as highly suspicious since Fred had been living free for a year and was a highly resistant individual, and animal enterprises will often strategically kill those who are known to resist. But even if Fred did live for some time on this farm, it is far from an ideal outcome for him. And furthermore, the other goats and sheep who broke out were still sent to auction. The story of Fred really calls upon us to consider what it means to forge solidarity with other animals in the struggle for liberation. And of course, not just the ones who are fortunate enough to break free and garner widespread support. On that note, here is a PowerPoint presentation that was part of a Zoom talk that I gave on this topic, and this will go more in depth on animal resistance and solidarity.
There's really no such thing as the voiceless. There are only the deliberately silenced or the preferably unheard. Arundhati Roy. A goat named Fred escapes an auction yard, lives among a herd of deer, and gains a network of supporters. After living free for a year, Fred is credited with helping 60 goats and sheep escape from the same auction yard he had escaped by headbutting the gate. An octopus named Inky slips out the top of their tank at an aquarium, travels across the floor, enters a narrow drain pipe, and exits through a hole into the ocean. A Siberian tiger named Tatiana takes deadly revenge on a group of people who were taunting her. She scales a 12-foot-high wall of her enclosure and roams the zoo grounds in hunt of the individuals. A cow and calf escape together from a farm by swimming across a pond, running through a forest, and jumping over a fence into the pasture of a sanctuary, where they hide among a herd of horses. An orangutan jumps on a large trunk and uses their hands in an attempt to stop an excavator and defend their home from loggers. A sperm whale rams a whale hunting ship to avenge the death of their kin and save the surviving whales. A horse named Chautauqua repeatedly ignores commands at the racetrack and refuses to leave the starting gate, despite the pressure they know will come as a result. 4 baboons held captive at a biomedical research facility roll a 55-gallon barrel into an upright position, climb onto the barrel, jump over the wall, and make a break for freedom with their captors in pursuit. These are just a few of the individuals who have defied domination. Whether by escape, retaliation, liberations, or everyday defiance, their actions are forms of animal resistance. Such stories invoke contemplation on the plight of captive and free-living animals. Thanks to sanctuaries and advocacy efforts, many such stories are now found across the social media landscape and beyond. In recent years, the resistance of the orchid Tilikum, documented in the film Blackfish, have played a significant role in raising awareness about animals' agency. Blackfish revealed to a large public audience the atrocities of SeaWorld, the plight of orcas, and animals' resistance. This presentation begins with examining the phenomenon of animal resistance. Despite the immense obstacles they face in human-dominated society, non-human animals continually resist. Next, we'll look at some examples of how animals have a powerful influence on society through their resistance. Then we'll examine how solidarity can be an interspecies project. By listening to other animals' voices and the messages conveyed through their actions, human allies can work to build solidarity with other animals. Resistance, in the social and political sense, has usually been associated with human beings. So what does it mean to speak of non-human animal resistance? Today, many traits that were once viewed as only belonging to humans are found in other animals too. For instance, in their book Wild Justice, The Moral Lives of Animals, Mark Bekoff and Jessica Pierce demonstrate that other animals can be empathetic, cooperative, fair, and come to the assistance of others. These traits are evident in many cases of animal resistance, such as when 11 elephants in KwaZulu-Natal came to the rescue of recently captured and distressed antelopes at a private game reserve. The elephants approached the enclosure, and the matriarch used her trunk to release the latches of the gate, allowing the antelopes to escape. Animals' resistance is a struggle, transgression, or bid for freedom against conditions of captivity, exploitation, commodification, cruelty, and/or dispossession. It is a response to animals' lives and bodies being rendered commodities through institutionalized violence or dispossessed through widespread habitat destruction. Animals' resistance often occurs in response to being either colonized subjects or exploited for colonial forces. Animals' property status and domestication served to control and impede resistance, such as through breeding, genetic manipulation, breaking in and taming, confinement and restraints, tagging and branding, and killing off the most rebellious individuals. To give an example of the latter, in 2019, a bison known as Blue 560 fled from a farm in upstate New York and made way for 100 other bison to flee with him. Tragically, upon the bison's recapture, the farmer quickly killed Blue 560 and told the media that this should have happened long ago. This example also shows how colonization is an ongoing process. The bison, captive in their homelands, are viewed as resources to be systematically exploited, and the loss of wilderness means there are fewer places for escapees to find refuge. To liberate themselves or others, animals may transgress, defy, or retaliate against borders, such as the material barriers of captivity, geographical borders, or species lines. In these crossings, they challenge conceptual boundaries that dictate where animals belong and how they are defined. Animals' resistance unsettles the hierarchical human-animal divide by countering the notion that those positioned at the bottom of this hierarchy are voiceless, passive, and subdued. When animals resist this positioning, they challenge their status as other and defy those placed or who have positioned themselves at the top of this hierarchy. While resistance isn't limited to such instances, it is interesting to note that some animal resistance clearly entails calculation, deliberation, and conscience. The historian Jason Rival explains that elephants forced to perform demonstrate intentional resistance when they repeatedly fight back or attempt to remove themselves from oppressive situations, despite understanding from experience that they will be subject to violence as a result. To provide another example, gorillas in Rwanda's Volcano National Park were witnessed working together to seek out and dismantle poaching traps that were harming and killing members of their community. They then warned others, including humans, to avoid them. There are numerous examples such as these that show reflective intentionality in other animals. Sometimes these cases require creativity, such as the appropriation of tools and various objects to escape, often seen in animals like orangutans or honey badgers. There are numerous motivations behind animals' resistance. One powerful motivation is love and friendship. In 2018, a hen named Inga made headlines in Germany after absconding over a fence from a fast food stall that she had been sold to. She then made an incredible 3-mile journey over 2 months back to the farm that had sold her. Upon arrival, she is reported to have clucked happily and remained inseparable from a rooster named Horst. Some speculated that love for Horst motivated what must have been a very harrowing journey. In response to Inga's fame, the farmer told media that he vowed to let her live. When animals resist, they sometimes become highly visible, and their resistance interrupts the purposeful distancing of consumers from animal exploitation. Animals who resist through escape are often reported as having earned their freedom. These statements are problematic in that they suggest that the escapee is exceptional and more deserving of life than those who did not manage to break free. When previously hidden animals enter the public sphere, industries, aided by the mainstream media, go into damage control. Some of their other strategies include downplaying the resistance, which, as Rival explains, may entail claiming that resistance is rare, and that these are cases of bad apples, or maintaining that the resistance was accidental. Industries also rely on stranger danger narratives. Escaped animals are sometimes framed as disorderly, mad, or frightening when they transgress borders and are considered out of place, while purposely forgetting the histories that have led these individuals to flee and appear in these human-centered spaces. Become aware of animal resistance, it becomes evident that animals' interruptions to the system are having a significant liberatory influence. In addition to sparking immediate changes, resistance can have a domino effect, inciting further transgressive acts. These include direct action, systemic changes, individual changes, cultural influences, and environmental influences. Animals have taken direct action by liberating themselves, but also liberating or resisting on behalf of others. We have already seen this in the case of Fred the goat liberating animals from an auction yard, the elephants who liberated antelopes, and there are other cases too. Sperm whales have been known to retaliate against hunters that sought to harm them and their kin. One case of sperm whale resistance occurred when a whale retaliated against the crew of a hunting ship called the Essex. On the morning of November 20th, 1820, the crew of the Essex was in the process of attacking and wounding a pod of whales from 3 boats. When one of the whales was harpooned, their tail damaged the boat of the first mate, Owen Chase. Later, Chase was repairing the boat while aboard the Essex when a large sperm whale was spotted approaching the ship. The whale rammed the ship and passed underneath, bumping the bottom with great force. He then struck the ship a second time and shattered the hull, which caused the ship to fill with water and sink, leaving the men bobbing in the wreck. As Chase later recorded in his journal, "This whale came directly from the shoal with which we had just before entered, and in which we had struck 3 of his companions, as if fired with revenge for their sufferings." Animals' social and political influence is highly evident in the tragic story of an elephant named Tyke. On August 20th, 1994, after enduring horrors of circus life, Tyke resisted her trainer and fled during a circus performance in Honolulu. Tyke was pursued by police as she ran through the streets, until she became trapped at an intersection and was killed by nearly 100 gunshots. Tyke's resistance prompted widespread critiques of animal industries. People questioned the exploitation of animals used for entertainment. Anti-circus laws were proposed, and an elephant sanctuary was started in Tennessee. Tyke's story inspired protests, boycotts, and lawsuits directed at circuses, and the city of Honolulu never hosted another circus with wild animals or elephants. Within several years, all elephants were removed from the Hawthorne Corporation, a once notorious supplier of animals for the entertainment industry. Animals' resistance has inspired vegan and plant-based living. In the winter of 1995, a cow, later named Emily, fled into the woods after leaping over a 6-foot-high fence to escape from a slaughterhouse in Sherborne, Massachusetts. Emily gained support from a herd of deer and a network of human allies, before finding refuge at an abbey. Emily's leap not only changed her life, but impacted others. She initiated debates about animal rights and made people aware of the local slaughterhouse. She gave people the courage to make their own leaps of faith and inspired a turn towards tofu. Emily's legacy lives on. As Louis Randa explains, to this day visitors arrive at the Pacifist Memorial and discover Emily's statue over her gravesite and her story. This leads them to, quote, invariably take the leap towards a more plant-based diet. Animals who resist have deeply moved witnesses. In her book Dead Meat, artist and activist Sue Coe describes crossing paths with a pig who briefly escaped from a slaughterhouse as a life-changing moment. She witnessed 3 men chasing the terrified pig, who darted around cars while several people looked on and laughed. Reflecting upon her response to learning that the pig would be slaughtered, Coe writes, "Maybe this was the first time I saw all was not well with the world." Animals who resist have inspired cultural changes, such as protest art. Visual artists, photographers, and documentary producers share revolutionary, haunting, and compelling images. Writers and artists envision life through the lenses of other species, highlighting and imagining what they are thinking, feeling, and saying. Animals also engage in sanctuary activism, whether through material contributions to their community or their role in educational awareness. At sanctuaries, they are busy parenting, teaching, and caring for one another. A cow named Justice showed others the same kindness he had once received upon his own rescue. After escaping from a slaughterhouse truck, Justice was still distraught upon arrival at Peaceful Prairie Animal Sanctuary. Yet the empathy he received from another steer helped him realize that he was now safe. As his caretaker Michelle describes, the resident steer Sherman, quote, went over to him and started licking him through the fence and calmed him down. Justice has remembered that, and he's done it for every new arrival since, end quote. And it doesn't matter what species they are. When a sheep named Rowdy arrived, he was terribly frightened, but Justice came to his aid immediately, charging up the hill to help him. After resisting through escape, some animals affect their surroundings by establishing communities and new populations, such as the rebel cows who found some solace living in the mountainous terrain and rolling hills of northwestern Italy. During the mid-1990s, a herd was introduced to Liguria to help with a fire risk reduction project. When residents decided to dispense with the project, the authorities started to round up the herd for slaughter, but a few cows remained at liberty. Because these rebel cows live under perpetual threat, as filmmaker Paulo Rossi explains, they survive by appointing a lookout, sticking to the high mountains during daylight, and only descending into the village's vegetable patches at nightfall. It is important to take these cases of animal resistance, world-making, and activism seriously. Expanding our notion of agency to include non-human animals provides a unique challenge to contemporary political activism. What does it mean to forge solidarity with other animals in their fight for liberation? As Lauren Corman explains, non-human animals have long been described as voiceless, both in an embodied and political sense, in ways that preclude their agency. On the contrary to calling them voiceless, by acknowledging animals' voices, we can strive to listen, dialogue, and forge solidarity with them. Cultivating solidarity with other animals entails making our best attempts to speak and act in solidarity with and for them, which helps counter the taken-for-granted normalcy of saviorism. Campaigns, networking, and protesting with and on behalf of those who resist is one powerful way to awaken and build on public sympathy that may already be present. For instance, after an animal escapes, humans can both record their resistance and take practical actions to get them medical care and to safety. Human allies can also support the resistance of other animals directly, such as hunt saboteurs helping animals escape in various ways, or following the lead of Fred, who freed sheep and goats, or the elephants who unlatched the gate to free captive antelopes. Activists can assist in the departures of other animals from places of captivity. Human allies can amplify the messages that animals are conveying. Stories from sanctuary workers who spend a considerable amount of time listening to and caring for their residents help fill some gaps in animals' stories. There are many creative ways we can draw attention to animals' standpoints. Resistance narratives play an important role in social progress, and non-human animals have many stories that need to be heard. While listening to animals' stories and voices, we can rewrite, reimagine, and transform our relationships with other sentient beings, envisioning and supporting just multi-species communities. Such communities entail supporting animals' autonomy to follow and develop their interests, and making our best efforts to include them in decision-making. As Vine Sanctuary's Patrice Jones explains, so we don't make the mistake of treating them as abstractions. Some animals who resist have rewilded themselves. An organic vegan rewilding replacing animal agriculture with forests, sanctuaries, and gardens would create welcoming spaces for diverse species and help dismantle neocolonialism. Finally, solidarity can entail mutual aid with non-human animals who join revolutions by their own volition. The Greek riot dogs, Kinelos and Lucanicos, were known to participate in the revolution and side with protesters against the state, despite water cannons and tear gas being hurled their way. Lucanicos would actually grab tear gas canisters and push them away to protect people. Both dogs were given veterinary treatment and cared for until the end of their lives. The animal liberation movement goes beyond humans advocating for other animals. As we have seen, solidarity occurs across species lines. Non-human animals free themselves and others, non-human animals form alliances with humans, and humans advocate for and form alliances with other animals. Despite millennia of domestication and attempts to obfuscate animals' resistance, and despite the disproportionate forces at play, many non-human animals resist and are actively pursuing liberation. Yet it should also be noted that an absence of visible resistance doesn't imply satisfaction. Life in captivity can lead to hopelessness. The wide variation in animals' energy and capacities for resistance makes solidarity across species lines even more important. The study of animal resistance takes us across diverse landscapes, from the forests where animals resist capitalist machinery or the environmental wastelands of animal enterprises, to the mountainous terrains where rebel cows seek solitude, the sanctuaries where diverse species can flourish, or the ocean depths where an octopus finds freedom. While many sympathize with those whose resistance makes them visible, billions of individuals remain oppressed without public outcry. During a time of momentous progressive social movements and uprisings, and the climate catastrophe we are facing, we can learn from our fellow animals' courageous actions for justice. Human allies can take urgently needed actions to support our fellow beings in their bids for liberation, while listening to, understanding, and amplifying their voices and the urgent messages they are conveying through their actions.